Okay, great. So welcome back. Our third session. I've had some interesting correspondences with some of you, and there was an overlapping theme in these correspondences, which I have probably mentioned in the previous two lessons, but I think it's important to even emphasize it further and deeper. And I see it as an overarching theme in the Feldenkrais method, and I see it as part of the art of doing ATMs. But I think in what we're doing with this type of work of the usage of the eyes and how the eyes are engaged in these different explorations, I think there's the approach of trying to do the exercise, right? I am the teacher proposing a particular pattern, a particular movement, a particular direction, a particular thought, an image, etc. And of course, in trying to follow those instructions, one might, stimulate a very, very interesting process. But in that process, one might take the approach that in thinking or trying to, to listen to one's self-engagement with the proposals, one might find oneself actually drawn and attracted in a very strong and deep way if one allows oneself to be able to be drawn and attracted to something which is not in the instructions. Okay, now why is this important? Because and again, it's an overarching theme, but in what we're doing, in these series of lessons, we're so oriented, or I'm trying to be very oriented towards the constructions of one's self-image, or towards the exposing of one's self-image. So if I ask of you to listen to the space in front of you, for example, right? And you can close your eyes and do it right now. If you're sitting with your eyes closed and I'm proposing listen to the space in front of you, and I'm mentioning an horizontal line, an imaginary horizontal line as a ring that encircles you. But as you sit there with your eyes closed, you're not sensing a horizontal line, or you find yourself straining to see the horizontal line. But in relation to that strain of seeing, I'm just giving an example, of course, but in relation to that strain of seeing the horizontal line, you see like a cloud very close to your left eye. And that's what's in your face, not a horizontal line that the teacher proposed, but a cloud in front of your left eye. Or, I don't know, you're attracted to the corner of your right eye, or you see a vertical line and not a horizontal line. So what do you do? So I cannot, like, I can't put it in words to how much I would encourage you to put me in the background and to try to follow those images or those parts of the pattern or those parts of the directions within you and in the environment, in your perception, that are attracting you the most. And why? Because first of all, what I'm offering is just one option out of endless options. The amount of images one can think of in order to stimulate one's own, sensory, kinesthetic, developmental process, they're just infinite, right? So I'm choosing the images, or I'm constructing the lesson based on whatever, not necessarily based on what you need exactly in that moment, what's most available, what's most tangible for your own perception with your own nervous system to be able to perceive and develop in that moment. And in trying to ignore or in trying to follow my instructions literally, you might be even creating enormous efforts and even parasitic efforts, because in a way, what's right in front of you is being pushed aside or ignored or manipulated or distorted, enable for you to conform to my instructions. So, and that's what's being done in, other methods. There are the teacher's instructions, you follow those instructions by hook and by crook. And the process of development would be by being able to conform to those instructions. It doesn't matter if it's a good or a bad thing, but it could be completely counterproductive to what we're trying to do. Some might have an easy time to relate or, to conform to my instructions in a way. It would be like, oh yes, oh yeah, I see the ring of the horizontal line. Wow, I never thought about that. Oh yes, and part of it is more clearer than the other. And they just go along with the instructions, but you might find yourself being drawn or attracted to something else. I cannot encourage you enough to not fight it and to actually go with it and allow it to help you navigate inside the lesson, even if you think, oh, but I'm doing something else. Well, maybe you're doing something else in terms of the directions or in terms of parts of the image. But if you know what you're doing, and if you know that what you're trying to do is to expose your own self-image and to bring to the forefront things that are always in the background, then you're doing the lesson, right? Because you're following my intention. That's my intention, not the right and the left, and not the precision, and it's not a geometry, navigation, topography sort of lesson, even though those words and that vocabulary is always there. So I will keep mentioning it in the ATM, but yeah, so I felt it was an important thing to remind us all of. Yeah, and then the interesting thing, once you follow those spontaneous trajectories within yourself, or you find that spontaneous path within yourself, if you return to the lesson, you might, again, if you do the lesson again, you might find your attraction, or you might find that your negotiation between what you're attracted to and the instructions in the lesson are different. They might even sometimes converge, or converge more, or maybe diverge more. But I think that's part of the beauty of feeling ourselves within the lesson, that the instructions they give a frame and they build an environment. Okay, great. So I want us to look into some more detailed aspects of the eyes. I'm sharing my PowerPoint. Great. And to continue and look into those aspects of how our forward orientation is so dominant and strong. So there are a couple of things we need to continue to look at in some detail. So maybe we will start with the position of the eyes. Yeah, so okay, so here is we'll look at some, let's look at these diagrams. Okay, so on the left, we can see the eyes of a rabbit. And the eyes of a rabbit are situated to the sides of the skull. So the orientation of the eye itself, of the lens and of the photoreceptors, is not forward, towards where the nose is pointing, but it's actually to the sides. So this sort of vision is called monocular vision, because the visual field on the right side of the head is being perceived by the right eye. the visual field or the space to the left of the head is being perceived by the left eye. And in front at the purple area, and there are different diagrams, some show it a little bit different, but you see that there's a little bit of a convergence between those two visual fields. So there is a part of the visual field right in front of the rabbit where there is an overlap between the right eye and the left eye. But that overlap is relatively very, very small. If you look at the eyes of a monkey here on the right, where the eyes migrated to the front of the skull, then you can see that there's a relatively small part of the visual field to our right that only the right eye has access to. What's written here is the right monocular field, and there is only a relatively small part of the visual field to our left, to which only the left eye has access to, the left monocular field. The whole purple area is a part of the visual field that is being projected onto both retinas. Both eyes are overlapped on this part of the visual field. So the migration of the eyes forward onto the skull is, as we mentioned last time, is what enables stereoscopical vision, in which the object that's in front of me is being seen by both eyes, but from a slightly different angles. I'll have, oh yeah, let's see this one. This is a very nice picture. Couldn't believe that I found it. I was surprised. So I'm standing right in front of the, what do you call it? The bowling, whatchamacallit?
Bowling pins.
Pins, the pins, the bowling pins. Okay, and when I look right, if I'm standing and I'm focusing on the first pin, I see one pin right in front of me. But actually, my right eye is not right in front of the pin, right? Because my eyes are not on the bridge of my nose. They're a little bit away from my midline to the right and to the left. So actually, my right eye has, you see this blue light projection from my right eye. That's how I see the picture of the pins with my right eye. So I see the right side of the pins with my right eye. And with my left eye, I see the left side of the pins. But they're so close to each other that my brain is able to converge those two images into one image, right? So the right eye sees a different image from the left, always. It always will see a different image from the left eye because they're not situated on the same position in the skull. They have a different perspective. They have a different view. One is a little to the right of the object. The other is a little bit to the left of the object. But it is so similar, and there's so much of an overlap that the brain is able to converge those two images into one, and it creates the perception of three-dimensionality. Because in fact, I not only see, because I can see the pin not only from the front of it, but also from the right, a little bit of the right side of the pin and a little bit of the left side of the pin, because of those differences in the positions of the eyes. If the eyes were completely to the sides of my skull, each eye would see a completely different image, a completely different part of the visual field. So different that there would be almost nothing to converge. Here, the picture is close enough, but a little bit different. And that difference gives another dimension onto the same object and enables to create a three-dimensional perception. Now, this three-dimensional perception is very important for, this is a good picture as well. It gives a huge advantage to what is called herbivores, right? I'm pronouncing it right? Herbivores versus carnivores versus predators. What does a herbivore need to see? Does he need to see the details of the grass? The exact color or the length of the grass? Not really. They just eat grass all day. They don't have to see the details of the grass. But what's most important for a herbivore is if there is a sudden movement of a predator, of an attacker towards the group, or right. So it would advantage from seeing as much as 360 degrees around it, because it can be attacked from behind or from the side or from one angle or the other. And it would have great advantage if it could detect movement. The details, the specific details of the object, is it really important if it's a lion or a tiger? Not really. It needs to detect dangerous movement from the periphery to know that it should, pick up its head from the grass and be more in alert to its environment, and to know if it needs to escape. But the predator, on the other hand, does need to see the details, because it wants to choose, the the individual in the group of the herbivores that maybe is a little bit slower or a little bit younger. And then when it attacks, it needs to see the exact direction and the way the herbivore is trying to escape. And then when it jumps onto the herbivore, it wants to jump onto the neck to get it at the most precise angle, right? To dig its teeth into it, et cetera, et cetera. So a much more precise, direct vision of what's in front of it is much more important, becomes a crucial necessity. So predators need their eyes to come forward to have a much more precise forward visual acuity. So prey birds have their eyes at the front of their skulls and have that ability to focus and zoom in on their predator on their prey from far away. Although all the cats that attack, right, and primates. Why do primates need to have their eyes forward in front of them? Why do primates need visual acuity and to be able to not only sense detail, but depth? Again, so this three-dimensionality gives more details because you have the same object on both eyes. So you have two pictures of the same object, but it also gives you depth perception. It gives you three-dimensionality. Why do primates need three-dimensionality? Because they're jumping from one branch to another, right? If you've ever been to the zoo or seen monkeys jumping on trees, it's an extraordinary, precise ability. And the distances that they jump from one branch to another and the precision with which they grab a branch, right, and the canopy is just extraordinary. You can't do that without having depth perception, without being able to precisely perceive the not only the position of the branch, but also the thickness of it, the directionality of it, right? If it's a little bit diagonal away from you or towards you, these are all depth cue perceptions that are essential and crucial for living on trees. Yeah, so this is again a similar image showing how the more the eyes come forward onto our skulls and the more they come towards each other, towards the bridge of the nose, the more there is an overlap of both images onto the same eye. Okay. Yeah, let's see if I have, sorry for jumping too fast. Good. Okay. But that's not enough. So another very important, yeah, let's go back just a sec so I won't get you too dizzy. Let's go back to the photoreceptors. Go back to the photoreceptors. Where are they? Oh, there they are. Okay. So do you remember how we talked about a photoreceptor? Oops, hold on. Okay, so remember how we talked about a photoreceptor, that in order for the photoreceptor to detect light coming from a particular direction, it needs to be blocked by a pigment, right? So light that comes from the back doesn't stimulate it, only from forward or from the sides. And we mentioned how the photoreceptors are in the membrane of the cell, and the membrane becomes, throughout evolution, in order to have more and more um, light-sensitive proteins in the photoreceptor. All those light-sensitive proteins are in the membrane. So if you stack up foldings of the membrane, you can have more and more, a more concentrated, a bigger concentration of light-sensitive proteins. Okay, so these are the photoreceptors in our own eyes, and there are two kinds of photoreceptors. They're rods. Rods are longer, but they mostly detect just the amount of light, if there is and if there isn't light, and the amount of it. Cons, which are shorter, they're sensitive to different wavelength, meaning to colors. So in our eyes, we actually have 4 different photoreceptors. We have an abundance of rods, and we have 3 types of cons that enable us to detect color. But the way that they're organized on our, oh, now I need to go out again, hold on. The way they are organized on our retina is the back part of the eyeball where all the photoreceptors are concentrated. I should have organized it better before. Sorry about that. Yeah, okay, let's look at this one. Right. So here we can see the 4 different kinds of photoreceptors. So the rods detect light. You can think of it as black and white vision. And then there are light sensitive cons for red color, blue color, green color, etc. Now, the way that they are organized on the retina, okay. So this is the retina. All the yellow lining inside the eyeball is the retina, filled with photoreceptors. But the photoreceptors on the outside edges of the retina are mostly or even completely rods. So they are more sensitive to darker conditions. So let's say when your night vision is based on rods, right? At night you don't see colors, you just see sort of black and white. So rods are very sensitive to light or not light. And the more we go towards the central part of the retina, and the central part of the retina is called the macula, which is right in front of the pupil, right in front of the lens. So when light enters our eye and our lens tries to focus the light onto our retina, it tries to focus the light right to the line behind it, which is here where we see the fovea centralis, which is an area that is much more concentrated with cons, those color sensitive photoreceptors. And we can see it, yeah, when we can see it here. So these are all, you see the red, green, and blue, these are all cons that are very sensitive to different wavelength. Each con is sensitive to a different wavelength. And they're very, very condensed right at the fovea, right right in the line behind the lens. And remember how we said that if you create a little pit, it also increases the light sensitivity. So in order to increase the light sensitivity of these cons, all the interconnecting neurons that go to that relay the information from the photoreceptors into the optic nerve and into the brains, they actually, as if though they moved aside to allow the light to come and hit directly onto those photoreceptors. So not only do the eyes come forward towards the front of our skull in order to have an overlapping image, but there is also a very, very central part in the retina that is extremely light sensitive. And on that part is where our, let's see if I have another picture of it. Yeah, is where we see detailed, or what we call direct vision. So if you look at something right in front of you, doesn't matter what, you look at something right in front of you, you would notice that there's, so let's say I'm looking at the pillow right in front of me, and it has a texture of like dots. There's a very, very small area on that pillow where I see the dots in a very, very high resolution, precise way. And it's not a matter of focusing because um, the pillow is right in front of me and it's flat. It's a matter of the concentration of photoreceptors. The more you pay attention to your peripheral vision, right? If you put your hands in front of you, for example, and you bring your hands gradually out to the sides, the more your hands go out to the sides into your peripheral vision, the less clearer your hand, the lower the resolution becomes, right? So you have this very, very high concentration of photoreceptors right in the middle of your eye, which enables you to have direct or high definition vision in a very, very, very specific point. So again, this shows that the importance of seeing with high precision is something that drove the evolution of vision in a way that is, again, very, very frontally oriented, right? Let's see if we have another. Yeah. So this shows the same principle. So even if you look at something that is far away from you, right? The closer the object is, it would be as if though you're seeing less of that object in clear vision. But if you look out the window and you have a tree, hopefully you have a tree out your window, you see not the entire tree, but you see a part of the tree in a very high sort of resolution, because that part of the tree falls right into your fovea, which is right here. You see that there's a little dimple in the retina right behind the lens. So that little dimple is very concentrated with color sensitive photoproteins, color sensitive photoreceptors. Now the part of the interesting thing is because on the sides of the retina, there are only rods which are only sensitive to, they're not sensitive to color, they're just sensitive to light. We actually see black and white. Our entire peripheral vision is actually black and white. And the fact that we see color in our peripheral vision is actually something that our brain makes up for by knowing that those objects around us are actually in color. But if you were to look at the image that falls on the retina in terms of how that image is transferred through the optic nerve, only a very, very small section of it is color vision. The rest of it is black and white. Okay, I think that's enough for now. Yeah. Okay, great. So welcome to all those that joined while I was not paying attention to you. So we're going to do a lesson partly in sitting and partly lying on our back. And if you're not, yeah, so let's do it like this. If you're not very comfortable sitting on the floor, please have a chair. So there will be situations in which sitting on the chair could be a good alternative, even a better option than sitting on the floor. So if you know that sitting on the floor is not the most comfortable thing for you to do, feel free to bring a chair and okay. So we will start with sitting. So either sit on the chair or on the floor. And again, I want to remind you to have the greatest liberty navigating yourself throughout my instructions and in ways that do not literally follow my instructions. Okay, so I will try to mention it again and again throughout the lesson, but okay. Now, sit with your eyes closed for a moment. In a comfortable position. And just sense your sitting, sense your position on the floor. The relationship between your different body parts. And see if you can also sense the space around you. And when you think about the space around you, are you attracted in your attention and your sensation to a particular area of the space around you? Right? The floor is part of the space around you. The air that's above your head is part of the space around you. Everything that is behind you and in front of you and to your sides, that's all part of the space around you. But notice if you're attracted, doesn't matter why, to a particular part. Now it might be the space around you that is very close to your body, very much the personal space. But it could also be the space around you that's far away from you. Right. And if you were to think, and again, if you're doing a mental effort to think about it, then don't think about it, or follow those parts of the image of your thought that are easy to follow. But if you were to imagine, because we're very affected by the walls, if you were to imagine that there are no walls and you're just sitting inside like a large dome, like those big tents out in those desert festivals or something. You're sitting in a very large dome. Just try to feel which part of that dome do you see clearly with your mind's eye. Is it easier to see the left quadrant of the dome, the part that's in front of you to your left, or the part that's in front of you to your right? Is it easy to imagine the dome that's above your head? Are you sitting right under the apex of the dome, the highest point of the dome, or did you position yourself at the back of the dome? Can you imagine the dome behind you, the space behind you? Can you feel that somehow your eyes are engaged in relation to that part of the dome of what you're thinking in some way or another? Good. Now cover one eye. And notice with one eye covered, are you biased towards, are you even more biased towards thinking about certain areas of the dome, certain parts of the space around you? And now switch between your hands. Cover the other eye. And notice if that's different and how it's different. And of course, again, don't make an effort to achieve a certain image or to be able to think about something specific. Right? So the dome is just like, I don't know, just a stimulus. You might just see a line or a diagonal or just a small section. Good. Great. And come lie on your back. And just take a minute to allow yourself to feel your weight lying on the floor. Notice the sensation of the stability, the consistency of the floor. And see if you can think about the space around you again. And maybe even think of being in that large dome. You're not inside a rectangular space, but as if though you're lying on the floor inside a large domed shaped tent or structure. And notice again which parts of that dome, which part of this image of the space around you are you paying attention to, or are you drawn towards? And does it feel like there are particular areas that are not so accessible that you would need to somehow strain yourself to enhance their image or to draw your attention towards those areas? It could be maybe that one side, the space to your left is much clearer than the space to your right, or the other way around. Or maybe the part of the dome that goes beyond your legs downwards. Or maybe that part of the dome that goes above your head upwards. Good. Good. Now again, cover one eye. And the other eye is closed. And bring the hand of the exposed eye, even though the eyelids are closed, we'll call it the exposed eye. Bring the hand of the exposed eye in front of you, forward towards the ceiling, forward in the air towards the ceiling, so that the pad of your index finger is hanging towards this exposed eye. Stay with your eye closed. Don't look at your finger, but feel that the pad of your index finger is in front of this exposed eye. The elbow can be lightly bent. It doesn't have to be straight forward, but not too bent, so that your index finger is at some distance from your eye. It's not very close up towards your eye. It's a little bit distanced from your eye. Good. And now, just imagine that there's a string connecting the pad of your index finger to the middle of your eye. And just try to feel, where should you position your hand in space? Where should your index finger be in relation to your face, that enables you to see that string with ease, that enables you to envision or to see in your mind's eye like a straight line from the pad of your index finger to your eye. Now, this line doesn't need to be vertical at the moment, so you can allow yourself to look for a diagonal. You might find yourself, oh, if I bring my hand down a little bit, it's easier, something becomes easier for my eye and for my thinking and for the image and for that kinesthetic perception, thought. Or if I bring my hand a little bit out to the outside. Right? So allow your sense of comfort and the clarity of sensing that line from your index finger to your eye to dictate where you should position your hand, and not some geometrical, ideal direction of a line. That's right. Good. And then imagine you have a pearl on that string, and the pearl touches your index finger, the pad of your index finger. And imagine a white pearl on this black string connecting your index finger to your eye. And once you imagine the pearl touching your index finger, see if you can transition the pearl and imagine that it's touching your eyelids. So just you can make it jump from your fingertip to the other end of the string where it enters your eye and the pearl touches your eyelid. And then again, move it, maybe not right now, you can take another few seconds, but transition it every few seconds from one end of the string to the other end of the string. And of course, if one end of the string is very straining, imagining the pearl touching your eyelid or imagining it touching your index finger is causing too much strain, then don't do it. Or do it for a second and then return to the other position that's less strenuous. Right? So don't force yourself into an image that doesn't come with ease. So that's the art of how you navigate and negotiate with yourself. Good. And then see if you can bring it also to a mid position, halfway position between your index finger and your eye. So you have three positions. And the halfway position might be much more complicated to imagine because it's not touching anything. It's just in the air somewhere midway between your index finger and your eye. Where is that midway in between? And again, don't force yourself, don't strain to find that midway. If it's very blurry and jumpy, let it blur and jump. Let it blur and jump. Don't try to fix it. Don't try to focus it. Good. And bring both hands down by your sides and rest for a moment. And of course, if you need to stand your feet when you're on your back, you can always go ahead and do so. And now bring the same index finger in front of the same eye, but don't cover the other eye. The other eye remains exposed as well. Both eyes are closed. And again, the finger is not close to your eye. It needs to be distanced. But your elbow is lightly bent. The pad of your index finger is pointing towards the middle of your eye, more or less. And imagine the pearl again, halfway between your index finger and your eye. And then grab a hold of the pearl with your other hand. Hold it with your thumb and the index finger of your other hand. Just there midway, don't open your eyes. Don't open your eyes. Hold the pearl there midway on the string. And now very, very slowly, start sliding the pearl towards the pad of your index finger. Very, very slowly. Very, very slowly. And again, don't make any effort or strain. Just the way that it slides, let it slide the way that it slides. It might reach the index finger of the other hand. It might not. And then very slowly slide it back to that halfway between your eye and your finger. And then again, slowly towards your index finger. Right, and if you're straining your eyes, see if you can, what can you change? What can you do to reduce the strain? Maybe you shouldn't be sliding the pearl so much. Maybe just a smaller range. Maybe slower. Maybe you should turn your head just a little bit, 1 degree or 2 degrees to the right or to the left. Think about your breathing as you're doing it. Think about your tongue, your lips, your mouth. And just notice if it reveals something to you about not knowing yourself in the way that you thought. Something about the precision or the directionality or the complexity that's a little bit surprising. What could be so complicated? 2 fingers, the eye in front of us. These are our most conscious parts. Almost every intention of every action that we do involves our hands and our eyes and the connection between them. Yet if you do it slow enough, can you feel that it feels like, oh, it's a much lower resolution image than I would have expected. Good. And bring your hands down and rest for a moment. And now slowly cover that eye, the one that you were using to slide the pearl and construct the string. So now have the other eye exposed and bring that hand of the exposed eye in front of it, directing the tip of your index finger towards the middle of your eye. And first of all, without even thinking about the pearl, just the position of your hand. Where should you position your hand to enable you to construct and to see in your mind's eye the string connecting your index finger to your eye? And it doesn't have to be a representation of the absolute vertical forward from the middle of your pupil. Right? Don't try to conform yourself to an external image, but actually try to use the image of the string to expose your preference. Allow somehow the image to conform to your ease, to your comfort, to your bias. Right? And then when you more or less have that black string connecting your eye to your finger, imagine a pearl on that string touching the tip of your finger a white pearl on the black string. And then imagine the pearl touching your eyelids. And then again, move the pearl to your fingertip. And then again to your eyelids. And again, don't make any effort or strain to get it right. It might be out of focus, it might be blurring out, the string might be disconnecting and reconnecting and aligning and disaligning. Don't fight any of that. You'll just allow yourself to feel those images that emerge just from thinking about those lines and relationships. Don't try to orchestrate them in any particular way. And then think about the midway between your fingertip and your eye. If the pearl was to stop halfway between, just in the middle of the string, and then reposition it again towards your fingertip or towards your eyelids, or then again towards the middle of the string. And again, it's more interesting to feel the bias or to feel the inaccuracy than to get it right. And in fact, I think that trying to get it right would be counterproductive. It would cause so much mental and muscular strain that you would just get tired very quickly and demotivated very quickly. Good. And bring your hands down and rest for a moment. And bring that hand in front of you again. Imagine the string and the pearl somewhere midway on the string, halfway on the string, and see if you can hold it with your thumb and your index finger of your other hand. And then from that midway position, slowly, slowly slide the pearl a little bit towards your finger, towards your index finger on the string, slowly. And again, don't try to get it right. Allow yourself to feel the inaccuracy. Doesn't really matter if the pearl moves sideways and does a diagonal movement that doesn't correlate to the original direction. I mean, of course it matters, but it doesn't matter if you don't. Right, and you will see that just by allowing yourself to sense, how spontaneously it reveals itself, after a few trials, it's going to be different. After 3, 4 times, something changes. You don't even have to worry about it. It just happens. Unless you're trying to get it right from the first time. Then the only thing that would change would be the tiredness and the strain. Great. And bring your arms down and rest for a moment. And slowly come back up to sitting. And again, if you're not very comfortable sitting on the floor, you can sit on a chair. See if you can sit comfortably, either with your legs crossed or somehow symmetrical, your legs in front of you. And close your eyes. Nothing to see on the screen. Close your eyes. Right. And bring one hand in front of you so you can orient the pad of your index finger towards the middle of that eye on the same side of the hand. So if it's the right hand in front of you, the right index finger towards your right eye, and vice versa. Not very close, but not very far, because then you'll be straining your shoulders so much. Somewhere comfortable, your elbow can be hanging, right? And first of all, try to feel where to position your hand, how to hold it in space, and where to position it, that you can sense that line without needing to strain, that you don't have to make any effort to see the line between your index finger and the middle of your eye, to see it, sense it in your mind's eye. I don't know, you try to move your hand a little bit to the right or to the left or up or down, and you might feel, oh, no, nope, I lost it. Or I'm really straining to keep the line if my hand is in this position, but there's a particular zone, maybe it's not a point, but there's a particular area in front of you where you feel, oh, yeah, I get it. There's the line, more or less, maybe not perfect, but yeah, I get it. Yeah. Right, and then maybe you would want to clarify that position by turning everything like we did in the first lesson, turning everything just a little bit to the right and to the left. If that line is clear, then your head and eye and hand and arm, they can move together a little bit to the right and to the left without the line disconnecting right away. Just a small movement, just to establish those relationships, to feel, oh yeah, they're together. It's in the forward arena. It doesn't have to be the exact geometrical laser point forward, but it's in the forward in front of the eye area. That's right. Good. And then with your other hand, hold the pearl halfway on the string. Hold the pearl halfway on the string, and then slide the pearl very slowly towards your eye. This time, slide it slowly towards your eye. And then slowly back to the middle, and you can do it as slow as you want, of course, with your eyes closed. It's all with your eyes closed. And you can do it so slow that you wouldn't reach, not your eye and not your index finger. So slowly you can do it if you want. That's right. But you want to use the speed. You want to adjust the speed to the clarity of your image. If you're going too fast and you're losing the line, then you're going too fast. That's right. Adjust the speed to the image, to the clarity of the image. Great. and rest on your back for a moment. All right, so of course, with the liberty to adjust what you're doing, how you're doing, what you're thinking of, the images that you're adapting from my suggestions, you always have the liberty to rest whenever you need. You always have the liberty to not do and just listen to the lesson. Right? Sometimes these they're not eye interventions, but they are interventions in a way, and they involve the eyes in so many ways and so dramatically that sometimes you need to do just the 10, 15 minutes of the lesson, and it's just completely counterproductive to do the entire lesson. So good. Slowly come back to sitting if you feel up to it, of course. And I'll enjoy seeing people lie on their back and taking a rest. And hold your other hand in front of you, directing it towards the other eye. And of course, try to notice, why is this the other hand and the other eye? Why did you choose the other side to begin with? Why? Because again, it's kind of a lesson where I'm not using right and left. So you're the one choosing the eye and the finger to start. Is it a random choice? Is there something about how to position this hand in front of your eye to create the image of the line, to see the line that is somehow different, maybe more challenging, maybe more blurry? Maybe not. Maybe this is your better side. I don't know. Could be different reasons for choosing one arm over the other or one side over the other. And then play with the position of the hand even before sliding the pearl. Just try to feel, are you trying to conform the position of your hand to some image of what's in front of you as a straight line? Or can you allow your hand to adjust itself to a general image of being in front of the eye, but it doesn't have to be the laser pointing in front of you. It can be diagonal to the side or downways, just so that there's a clear sensation, image connection of the finger to the eye. You can adjust your sitting. You might find that, oh, I keep holding my head in a particular way that's completely making everything totally hard. If I turn my head a little bit, or if I lower one shoulder down, or if I shift my weight on my pelvis here or there, oh, suddenly the finger-eye connection becomes a little clearer. Maybe. Yeah, but just don't forget yourself. Don't become, locked in on the details that you forget the rest of yourself. Good. And then when it's pretty much clear, hold the pearl midway on the string with your other hand, and then slowly slide it a little bit towards your eye, or maybe a little bit towards your finger. You feel and choose which way. Which way would be easier to start the sliding of the pearl? That's constructive of the image and the sensation of the connection of the eye and the hand. of the orientation to the front, to your chosen front. Because again, you might find yourself that everything is much simpler if you turn yourself a little bit, that you're not on the objective front and the coordinates of the room or in relation to the middle of your pelvis. But there is a biased diagonal that enables you to do everything more easily. That's right. Great. And lie on your back and rest for a moment. What do you think, Norman? Interesting lesson for someone who plays the flute. Right? Think of a flute player or a violinist. Right? They're always towards one side. They always have one eye so oriented differently towards the instrument and towards their hands than the other eye. And of course, their neck and their shoulders. But we all do a little bit, even without playing the flute or the violin. We all have those micro subjective adjustments or preferences that we don't even know about. Good. Now bring both hands in front of you. Right? Now, it's an interesting thing to think of having both strings parallel, same length, so that each index finger is right in front of its respective eye, and the distance between the fingers is the same as the distance between the eyes, between the middle of the pupil, right? So that both strings are parallel, going downwards, parallel from your eyes, from your fingers towards your eyes, and the same length, so one finger is not more forward than the other, and the same height, so one string is not diagonal towards your feet or towards your head. But then allow your fingers to drift by the sensation of ease of each eye and the sensation of ease of imagining those strings. And you might find yourself that for the right eye, it's actually much easier to see the string if it's a little bit in a diagonal here or there, maybe if it's shorter or longer than the other string. So forget the parallel lines. Just allow each finger to correspond to its respective eye and to the ease and the comfort and the ability to feel that connection, that line. That's right. And then even amplify it a little bit. If one string is shorter, shorten it even a little bit more. If one string is a little bit more open to the side, open it a tiny bit more. If one hand came down towards your feet or up towards your head, accentuate it just a centimeter more and see if it's even clearer in the exaggerated difference. If it feels even more natural if it requires less effort. Hola. Great. Now slowly bring it again towards the parallel, towards the what you would think as the objective line in front of each eye connecting to the index finger. And just feel that difference again, conforming to two parallel, not really objective because it's still in your perception, and your perception is subjective, but that image of parallelism. That's right. Good. And bring your hands down by your sides. And slowly come back up to sitting. And again, sit comfortably on the floor or on the chair if it's not comfortable for you on the floor. And hold both hands in front of you. Close your eyes. Both hands in front of you. And then again, allow them to drift. Allow each hand to find that position in which it feels that the eye and its respective finger, they have this nice black string connecting them, that it's easy to see the line of that string. But again, they don't have to be the same length. They don't have to be parallel. They don't have to be the same height. But notice if the position of your hands, allowing your hands to drift in this way, what is it reflecting? Is it reflecting the organization of your shoulders? The cortical image of your fingers? Or something about your eyes? Or something about how you perceive what's in front of you? The image of your orientation forward. And it might be hard to say who's dictating this position. Right? But just see if, there's one image, one line for the right and a different one for the left. It's not a mirror image. That's right. Now see if you can turn yourself a little bit with these two strings in front, in these positions. If you can turn yourself a little bit towards one side, just a little bit. So your head and shoulder girdle and your arms and your chest, maybe even a little bit of a movement down in your lumbar area, just a tiny bit of a turn. Not a big one, just a tiny bit of a turn. And which side did you choose to turn to? What's leading the turning? What made you choose turning to this side? And what happens if you turn a little bit to the other side? Just the tiniest bit. Does it fit this organization of the strings? Or do you need to change the position of your hands in relation to your eyes in order to be able to turn to the other side? Right. Great. And lie on your back again. and rest. Good. Bring both hands in front of you again. Hold your fingers in front of your eyes, but this time, imagine that the string from your right index finger connects to the middle of your left eye, and that the string from your left index finger connects to the middle of your right eye. So the strings cross each other. If they're more or less parallel, same length, same position, more or less, the point of intersection would be midway between your eyes and your fingers. Now again, don't force anything. Don't do any effort or strain to create a particular geometry. In fact, you might feel, oh my God, I can't make them cross because one is lower than the other. They're diagonal, but they're not intersecting for some reason. Or they're intersecting, but much closer to your fingers or much closer to your nose than you would have expected from an intersection of two lines in this geometry. Right? So don't force anything. But now just distance, slowly distance your hands from one another. Open your hands out to the sides very, very slowly, just a little bit, so that that point of intersection between the lines comes closer to the bridge of your nose. And then bring your hands back towards each other very slowly until each finger is more or less in front of its respective eye. And if the lines, if those strings intersect, you can imagine that there's a white pearl on the intersection. And as your fingers move away from each other, the point of intersection and the pearl slide a little bit towards the bridge of your nose. And then as your fingers come towards each other, the point of intersection comes towards the fingers, and the pearl slides towards, on that point of intersection towards the fingers, about halfway. And then again, distance your hands so the pearl comes towards the bridge of your nose. And bring your hands closer to each other so the pearl slides again towards the midline, towards the point of intersection. Good. And bring your hands down and rest for a moment. And then slowly come back up to sitting. And hold your fingers in front of each eye. But this time, don't cross the strings. So the string connects the finger to its respective eye. Right, and now very slowly move your fingers a little bit away from each other. So both strings receive a diagonal out to the side. Slowly, and then bring them back towards the center until they're more or less parallel. Right, and of course you might feel that as you take the hands away from each other, one string goes out to the side and a little bit downwards towards the floor, and the other one doesn't, maybe. So again, allow yourself to, that's right, have the hands, they follow their own path in the general frame of moving out to the sides and coming back to a more or less parallel position. Right. Now imagine that there is a pearl midway on each string. And as you move your fingers away from each other, the pearl on each string, it moves towards your fingertip. So it's as if though your right eye needs to track your right fingertip and your left eye needs to track your left fingertip as your fingers move away from your sides. So you're doing the opposite of convergence. You're going back in evolution as if though to have each eye oriented towards the visual field to the side of you, which of course for us is impossible to do. But just thinking about that image can be quite interesting. Could be quite interesting. And again, notice that perhaps one eye has a much easier time doing it, and the other one is like, it keeps pulling to the bridge of the nose. It's somehow resisting to move out to the side, to follow that finger. Fantastic. Great. And line your back again and rest for a moment. And just notice how you feel the floor supporting you. The weight of yourself on the floor. And see if you can think of the space around you. Maybe you can imagine that big dome, as if though you were lying on a floor in a big domed tent. Where do you position yourself in relation to the middle of the dome? Are you right underneath the apex of the dome? And And if you are, which part of you is underneath the apex? Your eyes, your chest, your pelvis, your feet? I'm never under the apex of the dome. I'm always in the back. So many years in school, always sitting at the back. Still trying to get that dome to move, to be above me, and I can't. Good. And now slowly come up to sitting. And take your time to find your way back up to standing. You don't have to rush. You can sit for a moment. Take your time. But then when you do get back up to standing, notice yourself in standing. Notice your feet, the contact of your feet with the floor. The position of your knees above your ankles. Sensation in your hip joints, how do you sense your pelvis organized on your hip joints? Your spine. Of course, your head at the top of your spine. And how do you sense the space around you? How do you sense the space around you? And does the thinking about the space around you contradict sensing your body organization? Or is there a way to somehow merge between those two attentions or two sensations, sensing the space around you while you sense yourself, your standing, your feet, your spine, your front, your back? And which parts of the space around you? Is it just what's in front of you? And are you still attracted to those parts that you were attracted to in the beginning of the lesson, or did something change? Right, and then if you turn yourself or orient yourself still in standing a little bit towards the side that's attracting you or that you're interested in, and then maybe a little bit towards a different direction, a different orientation. And again, is it just your eyes that you're orienting, or can it be the orientation of your entire self? And does it have to come on the expense of sensing your physical organization? Is it one or the other, either inside or outside, or is there a way to somehow merge and connect those two attentions, those two aspects of ourselves? Good. And take a few steps. You can walk around the room, explore your sensation in standing and walking. Great. And we'll take a 4-minute break. Okay, so you don't have to rush and you don't have to sit back in front of the computer right away. And we'll rejoin in 4 minutes. Okay. So, part of the challenge, part of the visual challenge for us, because of these specialized of the specific orientation of the eyes towards the front, and um, that position serving the purpose of having an overlapping, as much as an overlapping image between both eyes, so that depth perception can be achieved, requires an unbelievable sort of coordination of having the eyes always moving together, right? Because if one eye moves a little bit ahead of the other, then I'll have double vision. I always need to somehow, that relationship, of course, it depends on the distance of the object that I'm looking towards. If I'm looking towards a closer object, the eyes are more converged inwards. If I'm looking towards an object that's more far away, they're less converged. There's less of a convergence. But still, the brain makes one, if there's active vision from both eyes, the brain merges those images, and it means that it constantly has to maintain a very specific coordinated movement between both eyes. Otherwise, it would have double vision. The picture would be, right? You'll see two things of the same, you'll see the same object twice, which happens with many different eye pathologies, neuropathologies, you name it. There's like, there are textbooks and textbooks, and right, eye doctors that deal with it, ophthalmologists that deal with it, you name it. But this mechanism of moving the eyes together is extraordinary, and that's part of what we'll try to dig into next time, is the movements of the eyes themselves. But a lot of what we did, so so just like with everything else, we had to learn how to do that. Just like with everything else, the coordination of our eyes moving together in order to be able to maintain a uniform picture is an active, acquired action that we do each and every moment. Just like standing up, just like we were not born knowing how to confront gravity, just like we were not born knowing how to pronounce our vowels, and right? Babies see, if you look at newborn babies, you see that their eye, what is it called? Lifizol.
Wanders.
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 One eye wanders. They look straight at you, and whoops, one eye, right? It escapes them towards the middle towards the bridge of their nose. So convergence and learning to coordinate the movement of the eyes is in part a learned action. Not completely, but in part a learned action. And just like every other learned action, it can acquire defects. It can acquire, right, elements, bad habits can be ingrained or embedded in that learned action. And as we saw that we're so visually guided and visually oriented, even our thinking or whatever goes on in the habitual ways of how we think about ourselves and our habitual construction of our self-image is inseparable for how we coordinate the movement of the eyes between them. So that's again, going back to the original argument that I was making in the first session, that there isn't one single action that we do that doesn't involve our eyes, related to to our external environment and related to our internal environment. Whether it's extrospection or introspection, our eyes are involved in it. And if we're talking about the so again, I'm saying that, I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself over and over, but if we're talking about the involvement of our eyes, we cannot ignore the fact that our eyes are trained to create this overlapping image to be able to see three-dimensionally, and that is forward orientation. That is a forward guided action. So just that convergence and that coordination between our eyes being habitually oriented forward towards the front, trying to pick up those details that we saw, that you need the control of the lens to be able to do the accommodation to pick up those details. You need to orient that area in the retina that's right behind the lens where the highest definition vision is. You need to be able to orient that point towards your object. You need to coordinate both eyes so there will be an overlap. That is there all the time with every action that we do. And again, with every action that is not a visual motor task sort of action. Right? So that brings us back to the big argument I was trying to make in the first session. So everything that we did today, a lot of what we did today, right? Covering one eye and looking out of one eye. If you have vision in both eyes, that's something that you never do. Right? You never guide yourself with one eye if you have vision from both eyes, if you have stereoscopical vision. So a lot of what we did today was trying to expose how the usage of our eyes is habitual, and therefore it's biased or it has preferences according to the acquired habit. Just like with any other movement, just like with standing, just like with how we organize our back, just like with our breathing, just like with our turning, and so on. Okay, that's it for me. Now it's your turn.
Fascinating.
So you're welcome to open your microphones.
Yeah, Raz, I have a
question. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Carrie.
Too many head injuries
Yeah.
came back to me during this
Yeah.
thing with the nape of the neck. So when I redo your ATM, what's some good advice for that?
Oh, wow. Sleep through it, 90%, so that you get to do only 10% of the lesson. No kidding. No kidding. This is, I mean, Moshe taught this lesson. This is an AY lesson called Pearls and Eyes. I changed it around a little bit, but not too much. The original lesson is more or less the same. And it's a lot. The lesson is a lot. Part of the reasons for doing the first two lessons that we did, not that they weren't a lot, but part of it was to prepare us for this lesson. But still the amount. So look, I mean, for me, each situation, and there's like another 5 situations that we did not do. For me, each situation is a world of its own. And in my subjective experience, and you know, I can listen to Moshe, the Hebrew recordings. My subjective experience is that I stop the recording statistically. I stop the recording more than I play the recording throughout the end. Right? Because he moves on to another variation. I'm like, wait. I'm not ready for that. Hold on. So I pause the recording. And I find myself, oh my God, there's a whole world just in this variation. to explore and to clarify, right? So, he doesn't, I'll give you an example. He doesn't do the variation of, allowing your hands to drift so you can find where each line is most easily oriented or organized. He just says, okay, fingers in front of the eyes, 2 parallel strings, right? And then he says, okay, slide the pearls. And I'm like, wait, hold a second. I press the pause button. And I'm like, 2 parallel strings? Really? Really? Well, I have to think about that for a moment, right? Because one string is shorter, and then I feel like, well, 2 parallel strings, my right eye is straining. Why is it straining? Oh, if I move my hand to the right, oh, now it's not straining. Oh, but now it's not parallel. So just sensing that difference between parallel strings and not parallel strings according to my own organization before sliding any pearls. Wow, that's a whole lesson. That's a whole lesson. And even that, I might find myself, woof, I got tired after 5 minutes. Even by going with my own tendency and my bias, there's something so, it's a little bit like working with breathing, that for some people, it's just impossible to work with breathing because just thinking about their breathing interferes their breathing in a way that reinstates their pattern of anxiety or breathing, being constrained. And it's just, no, forget about it. Let me do other stuff. I'll do pelvic clock, rotate, let me twist my spine, elongate, forget the breathing thing, right? And it might take them years to find their way into breathing lessons. Same with the eyes. It can be super, super, super intense. So as always, not only to do less, but also, to find the part of the lesson that you feel that your attention and your attraction goes towards. It flows like, oh yeah, here, oh, one string, oh, that's like water, no problem. Let me be here, that's fine. Right?
Definitely, I felt unease with divergences. So when I get too tight along the way, as maybe I take a year to get this lesson, right? I'm fine with that. So if I'm pinching, then can I just throw that in as my sort of my salvation along the way?
What do you mean if you're pinching?
Well, if I get to a point that's causing the post-traumatic stress disorder, to overstate the case, and I know that the divergence would ease me, so can I just sort of sprinkle that into the different variations?
Oh yeah, you can do whatever you want. Carrie, if you know what you're doing and you understand the situation, you can now create 100 different lessons that work for you better than my lesson.
Bless you for that.
Yeah. Okay, Sigala.
It was fascinating, and for me, I definitely felt the organization of the my joint, my
Shoulders.
Shoulders and everything. But I was thinking today I was working with the baby with a CP, which he cannot see, and he only have his left eyes a little bit nerve החזר עצבי בעין שמאל. But I was thinking about blind people or people that they cannot use their eyes. What if, is it useful to use their imagine and all this? It's interesting. Like, what do you think about? Can they imagine? Can they have? Well, it's probably different between a blind that they have in their memories or blind that were born blind. But the use of the eyes, for example, the mother told me that she went with him to the doctors and they, like the בדיקות של התפתחות הילד, development, and they check, they do the test for the baby compared to normal baby. Like they
Right.
take something and they do it, and they expect him to turn his head. But I said, this is so fucked up. How can he turn his head when his eyes doesn't work?
Yeah.
And like the whole
Yeah.
system, they don't understand.
Yeah, look, it's a very you're asking a very complicated question, and you're asking two different questions
Yeah,
because
it's
he's not blind. He does have partial vision in one eye, so it's different than being blind. I can answer you in a very general way that even blind people orient themselves towards their environment. Their entire self-orientation systems are intact. They're just not based on visual photoreceptor stimulation, but they build a map, whether they're blind from birth or not. They have a map. They have internal representations of their body. They have internal representations of their environment. They have spatial memory and orientation probably better than ours.
It was
Or
interesting with the dome.
very different than ours.
Yeah.
Different and in many ways much more developed than ours.
Yeah.
Right? You try to walk down the street, you look ahead in front of you and you see there's nothing on the street, nothing at all. And you walk straight line. It's just unbelievable how much confusion and even anxiety is provoked after the third step, even though you've checked, you have 50 steps to walk forward, no obstacle at all.
I tried in the museum.
It's like you get dizzy. It's like so disorienting. You don't know where your leg is. It's like it messes up your body perception. So we're so wired into visual perception. But even blind people, they have all these orienting systems working, which they have developed. So maybe the usage of the words would be a little bit different. But of course, a blind person would bring his right arm in front of him, okay? And you can say, okay, forget the eyes, put the tip of your nose. Right finger in front of the tip of your nose, left finger in front of your tip of your nose. If you do it slowly enough, with enough attention, you'll feel a difference. And everybody would feel a difference, right? That it's easier with one hand or the other, that one hand is more, I don't know, you bring both hands to the middle of your, I don't know, to the corner of your mouth, right? You pull a string from the corner of your mouth to each finger. You'll feel the difference. So again, what we're trying to do is not to improve vision. It has more to do with exposing our self-image. So
yeah. And also I wanted to ask about the image of the dome. It was very interesting, like what is the idea behind like to have your own image in a big space, or where you, it was very interesting.
Well, we live in apartments, most of us. Looks like you guys live between walls as well. And our perception of our space is a lot around straight walls that are 90 degrees to each other, right? So the image of the dome has something more of a neutrality to it. It's more open. And because if you lie on the floor in your apartment, you know where the walls around you are. So you're already biased in the map, your internal representation in relation to the room. So the dome was more like a neutral, something neutral that you can relate yourself to and then see, oh, my neutral relation to the dome is not really neutral. I'm biased towards particular parts of the dome. So that was a little bit like the line of the horizon, that big ring of the line of the horizon around us.
I have a question, Raz.
Yes.
I want to put in one question. maybe I'll do the observation first. So the observation about the apparel on a string, this addition of finding the direction of my personal string and not necessarily the geometry of space and mean space, the result of it were that when we travel, when we followed our hand, my accuracy, I actually, with eyes closed, I met my finger.
That's
and
amazing.
With eyes closed, I made my eye. And it's not the first time that I do this lesson, and I'm high achiever to always meet my hand, but it was a struggle, and it was such a degree of ease. And then through the lesson, as you guided us, the awareness of the degree of ease of how the eyeballs want to organize themselves. Where is the comfortable place, the aha place? So my question, that's observation. And by the way, for Sigal, working with kids both with what's called cortical blindness, which is like the center, the brain had a stroke in the area of the vision, or with other degrees, with the neuroplasticity and all the understanding that Moshe knew 50 years back, using many similar things, whether it's vision, whether it's reflexes that we have, like tapping makes you clench, to awaken for those kids the ability to create pathways technically to the eye and the vision, but that's a side kicker. So question about this fovea, this area that concentrates the cones and mostly the cones and the rods. From your reading, did you find if it's been anatomically innate from birth as part of our development in you, the location of it, or is it being intensified as we keep being exposed to light? Is this location is really anatomical?
Yeah, it's an anatomical location. Yeah.
Okay, so then it brings the question, so people who had external intervention in positioning their eyeball, like in the old days, but still they do it for kids with cross eyes.
Yeah.
At this moment, it's not falling. At this moment, they take your eyeball, and just because the muscle don't hold it in the right place, and you already spent several years looking at life like that, and now they move the eyeball, now this area is not in the pathway, within your space, whatever.
Well,
anyway,
but that's because your brain is not able to. Your brain is not able to integrate the new picture, right? As if though the adjusted picture from the intervened eyeball is not being integrated with the other eye. So what you're describing is more a difficulty for the brain to integrate between the two pictures after the intervention. But anatomically, the eyes are positioned more correctly after the intervention. But again, it doesn't mean that the brain knows what to do with it, because the brain needs to learn how to use those two pictures, how to merge between those two pictures. And if it got habituated to merging them or not merging them, but using one eye more dominantly than the other, then it might not necessarily know how to relearn to use those two images after the intervention. But in terms of anatomy on the retina in relation to the eyeball itself, yes, it's an anatomical position, but that doesn't mean anything. I can have a foot and not know how to step on the foot, right? I can have an arm but not know how to lift my hand. I have to learn how to use myself. So, Joyce?
I wanted to, I don't know if Madeline is here today, but I read the book that she recommended this week called Fixing My Gaze. I have a parallel story in the breathing domain and in the visual domain that every specialist seems to say, oh, wow, we can create some changes within our little domain. But it seems that only Moshe Feldenkrais has taken it to the big picture, and integrated all these systems. So that alone was fascinating. The book is a really easy read. It was particularly pertinent to me because I do have double vision. And my parents, smartly enough, I guess they met the right people, didn't do surgery. I did visual training as a child through till I think 8th grade. I sat for hours.
Wow.
It worked, it didn't work. I had glasses, didn't have glasses, and I functioned. I mean, I drive, I play tennis, and I probably would have been better at everything. So even now as an adult, I redid visual training at age 40. And it was only then that I said, wow, I really understand now what 3D vision is. Didn't sustain it. Now again that I'm doing the Feldenkrais lessons, and this whole lesson today is the Brock string, is the typical string with the beads on it that the visual optometrist, the behavioral optometrists give you. So you're doing it without the string. And if you have stereoscopic vision, you know, you can do this. But if you don't, it is fascinating what you can't see. You can't see those parallel lines. And I didn't see, I had a hard time keeping my strings coming from my eyes to a target. I kept moving the location of my strings. They went from my shoulder to my finger. They went from my finger to my chest. Like, I couldn't sustain it. So the whole thing is just fascinating.
Amazing. So imagine what sort of an improvement you could possibly get from improving the image before actually practicing, you know, with your eyes open, following a bead. Right?
You reduce any strain and effort by having eyes closed.
And you
and no
prepare,
one,
and you prepare the organization of the entire system, because if you can't imagine it, how are you going to do it? With a lot of force and strain.
A lot of force.
Right? If I'll give you a string with a bead and you'll try to follow, you'd be using your eyes with so much force and so much parasitic force and in such a non-coordinated way. Right? But if you organize yourself just by using the imagery, which you saw how strongly it exposed the disorganization that you couldn't even imagine the string. There was no string. You were with your eyes closed. It was all in your head, right? But your head couldn't organize it. You couldn't even construct the image. Amazing.
Yeah, got work to do.
Can I follow up on that, Russ?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm wondering what actually is happening, and not on such a granular neurological level, just a more plain spoken level. For example, in the biases. So you go to imagine the string, and it's easier, let's say, to the left side with one of your eyes.
With which
than
eye?
in the middle. Well, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Let's say left eye, it's easier to the right, so it's towards the other side. So what does that mean? That means that person looks habitually with their left eye to the right more in their daily life. It means that movement is more accessible in the eyeball. Because I'm trying to. It seems like with a lot of, because these types of lessons are very personal for me. Like I'm not interested in just feeling quasi better afterwards. Like I really want to solve this puzzle. It seems like with a lot of these Feldenkrais lessons, you don't get to see the process for how Moshe ended up deciding this was the way to approach it, and not doing the actual Brock string or doing something like that.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out how to really use it and what to take from it, because and sorry to go on, one more thought I have is what somebody who has very coordinated vision, how they experience the lesson, if that person would be quite simple for them. I mean, is that a gauge of healthy seeing, this imagining stuff? So that's a lot, but that's
So what Moshe mentions, not 100. Yeah, I think it's in this lesson. Yeah, it's in the. I'm pretty sure that in Pearls and Eyes, he says that the position of your fingers or these biases, they represent your eyes. That it's a reflection of the organization of your eye. Right? So it's not the image of your hand in space or your shoulders, it's your eyes. So then it can be very interesting to think, oh, okay, if I recognize my pattern, if my fingers or the position of my hands help me to expose the pattern that I have in the organization of my eyes, how can I then use that to change something or to improve something? So you have the whole, all the tools of the method are at our disposal to try to think, okay, I feel that one hand is biased here versus here. I don't have a parallel line. So what do I do with it? Just like if you feel that you're turning, easier to the left than to the right, and you want to improve the turning to the right. So I think what we did today, there's a lot of, we touched upon a lot of those sort of tools. And even in the previous lessons, we worked with those tools of trying to expose and then trying to use it, trying to intensify it, trying to enlarge the difference, to enhance the self-image and the picture. And of course, with each one of these exercises that we did, one can always try to think, okay, now let's go back to the center and see if the center improved. Do we need to exaggerate the bias again? Or can we now work on the center? Can we reverse the bias to the other side? Or does that feel still impossible? And what strategies can we develop around it to make that spill over from the coordinated, easy direction onto the other side?
So if somebody has difficulty, let's say, just imagining the string really coming from the center of the eye, or just even imagining the string,
yeah,
what is that a reflection of? It means they're not aware spatially of where that eyeball is, or that link between imagining and
yeah, it has to do with a lack of proprioceptive awareness. It's reflective of something in their finger or hand-eye coordination. Yeah, absolutely. It's like, again, if you tell me, okay, lift your pelvis up in the air with your standing feet when you're on your back and feel one vertebra at a time, and there's this chunk of my spine where I feel it like a block. I don't feel one vertebra at a time. Of course, it's also reflective of a lack of body image in that area, right? A lack of differentiation and a body image that is not well developed in that area of the spine. And the cortical representation, or whatever you want to call it, if you think about the homunculus, so that area of the homunculus is not well developed. There's a low resolution representation of that body part, or of those relationships, the associations between those parts and those areas in the brain. Yeah. And it's probably reflective of how they use that eye for vision. I mean, if you have a difference between, right, if you can sense the string better in one side and then the other side, it's probably reflecting somehow that you're using one eye better than the other. Right?
Okay, thank you.
Right. Okay. Great. I think we can stop the recording. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Please feel free to write me. I love getting your emails, even if I send just a short answer, but really a joy to read. So please stay in touch and hope to see you next week.
תודה רבה.
Thank you.
Kif,
תודה.
take care.
Bye. Thank you. That was great. Mind-blowing way.
Yeah, thank you. That was really difficult in a good way.
I know. Challenging.